What if your favorite guilty pleasure dating show was actually a rebranded imperial power structure? In this video essay, we'll unpack how ABC's The Bachelor echoes centuries-old systems of control, exoticism, and gendered performance, rooted not just in modern TV tropes, but in the architecture of empire. The Bachelor mansion and its residents during the 21 days of the Bachelor season are always the talk of the nation. Bachelor Nation, that is. Since its inception in 2002, this non-traditional dating show has swept the country due to its emotional intrigue, unconventional methods for connection, and its sheer absurdity. The premise is simple but captivating. One man looking for love, and 25 single women, all there because of him, hoping somewhat irrationally and naively that, as the group is whittled down, they will be the last woman standing. Each episode ends with the famous rose ceremony, a ritualized elimination process that is now cultural shorthand for rejection. What unfolds over the course of a season isn't just competition. It's a simulation, a courtship, a controlled, high-stakes environment where women are surveilled, edited, and emotionally played for entertainment. Traditional values of Western monogamy are checked at the door for this experiment in love.
Hey, ladies.
But what if this isn't just about early 2000s culture? What if there's a deeper, older system at play? While the premise may seem like a leftover or anachronism from the peak misogyny of the early aughts, the Bachelor franchise represents something much larger. With the women situated in a setting reminiscent of a harem at the beck and call of one man, each with their own distinct personality, being surveyed and recorded at all times, the institution itself reinforces westernized tropes of love and gender, drawing upon historical archetypes of women that have existed for millennia. At its core, The Bachelor echoes Western conceptions of the East to validate the male experience of polygamy and the harem, but only as a narrative device on the path to the final goal, traditional monogamy. The structure allows the show to indulge in fantasies of control and exoticism, where women's desirability is managed, ranked, and ultimately claimed within a curated, ornamental setting. Before we go any further, let's pause. What is a harem, really? A harem historically is a term in the Byzantine Empire used to describe a sacred space for the women of the Sultan, concubines, wives, and prostitutes. Leila Ahmed, scholar of women's studies in Islam, explains that central to the harem experience was the ideal of seclusion. In quote, a man's right to keep his woman concealed, invisible to other men, end quote. This ideal shaped the lives of many Middle Eastern women, particularly those in elite settings. Women were not to leave unless chaperoned by a eunuch, always monitored to preserve their purity. In imperial China, emperors kept vast harems with strict hierarchies. Concubines had specific titles and roles with corresponding gifts and duties. In this context, 25 women and one man sounds almost restrained. The deliberate structuring of The Bachelor begins to feel eerily familiar. Jesse Palmer, the host and a former Bachelor himself, acts as a neutral messenger, guiding, narrating, and desireless. He echoes the role of eunuchs or attendants in imperial courts, acting as a bridge between the women and their suitor. Palmer is the only one aside from The Bachelor who can permit the women to leave the mansion. But in the modern version, surveillance doesn't just rely on individual guards. Instead, it is the omnipresent camera. The camera is everywhere. It watches, filters, edits. And through that lens, control is established. The show creates a dynamic where women are present, but ultimately inaccessible, objects to be evaluated, but not truly known. They're motivated to behave, not just for The Bachelor, but also for a national audience. While modesty in terms of dress isn't emphasized on The Bachelor, there is a different kind of concealment at work. The women's bodies are visible, but their agency is not. Their identities are filtered through producer edits, confessionals, and voiceovers. In this way, The Bachelor doesn't liberate women, it reconfigures the harem. Postmodern surveillance takes the place of veils. The result? Their minds are just as inaccessible as any veiled subject in a historical harem. This echoes the trope of the harem film, where the Western camera reveals what was meant to remain hidden. Because we can't access authentic images of harems, thanks to the ideal of seclusion, Western media fills in the blanks. These imagined visuals are racialized, sexualized, and built for consumption. They reflect a fantasy of unveiling the exotic. These borrowed visuals serve to heighten the fantasy of a distant, exotic space, one that is under complete narrative and aesthetic control by the show's producers, and palatable to a Western audience as a pleasurable, if distorted, version of the other. As Edward Said explains in Orientalism, the concept of the other is central to the Western self-definition, wherein the East is constructed as mysterious, sensual, and fundamentally different, allowing the West to control its own rationality and superiority by contrast. Scholars like Ella Shohat and Robert Stam expand on this, showing how Orientalist aesthetics prepare audiences to read and accept these borrowed cultural cues. So when we see velvet, flickering lanterns, and exotic date destinations on The Bachelor, we know what story is being told, even if it's never said out loud.